Does your favorite team always seem to stub their toe and just end up like a foot short of reaching the college football playoff? Well, good news. Michigan was one of those programs, and they finally broke through this past year. So I wanted to look back at the college football playoff era, which started in 2014, and look at the winningest programs during that time that have been unable to reach the college football playoff. Michigan was one of those programs until Jim Harbaugh led them to the college football playoff in the 2021 season. So I did some research. I looked at every single team and their records from 2014 through the 2021 season. This includes Group of 5 schools and Power 5 schools. I published this list at 247sports.com, and then I went and ranked them based off of what I believe are their better chances of reaching the college football playoff before the 4-team field, I should say, goes away probably in 2016 or 2026 when it is inevitably expanded to 12 teams. So number 1 on the list was Appalachian State with 80 wins. Number 2, Boise State, 76. Then comes Wisconsin, our first Group of 5 school, at 75. Oklahoma State and San Diego State tied at 72. San Diego State surprised me a little bit. Memphis at 71. Iowa at 70. Utah at 68. Penn State at 67. And then a handful of schools tied at number 10 with 65, including BYU, Florida, Louisiana, Marshall, Texas A&M, and UCF. So I hate to say it, we could probably just eliminate those Group of 5 schools, though I did put Appalachian State as my last team on the list as having a shot at reaching the college football playoff here the next 4 seasons. I put them at 9th on a 9-team list because I didn't feel like I'd go to 10 with the teams that were available, depending on based off their history, their schedules coming up, and their rosters as they look right now and for the foreseeable future for the next 2 to 3 years. But I put Appalachian State at the bottom of the list for one reason. Their schedule's actually pretty good. And if they can go undefeated and get some breaks, much like Cincinnati, they can reach the playoff if they go undefeated and they could pick up a road win against a top 10 Power 5 program. And they've got the opportunities to do so because they go to UNC in 2023. They also go to Clemson in 2024. They go to South Carolina in 2025. And I put South Carolina on there because here in the next few years, South Carolina's going to be a top 25 team. Maybe they could be top 10 at that point. Who knows? In 2025. And this upcoming season, more importantly, they host North Carolina, which North Carolina is not going to be a top 25 team this upcoming season. And they go to Texas A&M. Texas A&M could be a top 10 team by the end of the season, if not better. So App State has opportunities. They have a road to get to the college football playoff because Cincinnati has shown that to them. The issue is they have no room for error. They have to go undefeated, and they have to pick up one of those top 10 wins, just like Cincinnati did when they beat Notre Dame on the road. If Cincinnati didn't have that win against Notre Dame on the road and it was just someone else, even a top 20 program, Cincinnati would not have been in the playoff this upcoming year. So who else is in this realm? Well, Power 5 schools, no one else. And so I wanted to go through the most wins in the college football playoff era for Power 5 teams that have not reached the college football playoff yet. And those teams are 1 through 10, Wisconsin, Oklahoma State, Iowa, Utah, Penn State, BYU, Florida, Texas A&M, TCU, and Auburn. All right, so we got that out of the way. This is my ranking of the teams that had the best shot at reaching the college football playoff between now and whenever the playoff ends, this 14 playoff ends, which is probably going to be the 2025 season as I see it. Number 8, the last team on my Power 5 list with the best chance. It's Florida. Doesn't look good right now for Florida, but I love Billy Napier. I love the staff he's built, and not just on the field, but off the field. He's probably got the second best off the field staff in the country, maybe the SEC, but probably the country right now, next to Alabama. He has built an incredible personnel staff, much like he did at Louisiana. That's why Louisiana was so good on the recruiting trail. If you can get that thing turned around at Florida, it'll be because of the recruiting and the transfer portal. You're not going to see that immediately there, But 2023, I think, is when you'll start seeing things rev up there. And there's no reason why Florida should not be able to get top 5 to top 10 classes every single year. Billy Napier should do that. I think he should have them challenging as a perennial top 5 team in the recruiting rankings every year. And if that's the case, before 2026, he could build that Florida program back to one that actually gets to the college football playoff for the first time. Number 7, Penn State. Seems like Penn State's always in the playoff conversation the first few weeks of the season, then they kind of trail off. I do wonder, though, under James Franklin, if these last 2 seasons, which have mirrored almost identically his first 2 seasons at Penn State, I wonder if these are, kind of flashes of the pan and they're about to get back to winning 9-10 games a year, or if we're seeing the downturn of the Penn State program in the James Franklin era. Well, Penn State doesn't believe that. They just gave him a new 10-year, $70 million contract. So they're putting all their chips in the middle of the table. But the problem is Penn State started hot this past year, but then they went 2-6 the rest of the way. They started the 2020 season 0-4. So where's this program going to be? I don't know. Until they get a great quarterback, and by the way, this is going to be a common theme for every Big Ten team that you hear on this list. Until they get a great quarterback and can start having explosive plays down the field, I don't see them being a playoff team. Sean Clifford, good quarterback, not a great quarterback, and he's certainly not an elite quarterback like the ones we've seen win national championships over these last few years. All right, number 6 is Miami. Much like Florida, love the staff that Mario Cristobal has been able to build there. And also, he's got tremendous financial report at Miami, whether it's through NIL or, of course, the administration actually putting their money where their mouth is and giving him an $8 million pool to hire assistant coaches. I think it's much like the Florida idea. If they can get things going in the transfer portal and recruiting because of all that, this could be a playoff team before 2026. And let's be honest, this could be a team that with a couple of breaks could challenge as a 9 or 10 win team this upcoming year. I love quarterback Tyler Van Dyke. The cupboard is not bare there at Miami by any means, guys. I know that feels like that's the case because Manny Diaz was just fired. That's not. Look at that roster. They could be good this year. Now, a playoff team this year, but in a couple of years, things go right in recruiting. That could be it. And number 5, Oklahoma State. This was a team I struggled with, a program I struggled with, and maybe even dropping a couple of spots because Oklahoma State has been there. They have been top 2, top 3 before, and they stubbed their toes. Remember 2011? When they looked like a lock to get into the BCS national championship game, and then they go to Iowa State on a Friday night and lose pretty much inexplicably. They were going through some emotional trying situations at the time, but they lost on a Friday night, and that ended it. Then this past season, they really were kind of playing close games early. They got it going, and we saw what happened with them losing a couple of games, but they still finished the season very strong. They beat Notre Dame in the bowl game. Mike Gundy is the best coach they've ever had at Oklahoma State, will probably be the best coach they will ever have. Does that mean it'll ever be a playoff program? More likely than not, no. But you know what helps Oklahoma State? OU and Texas going to the SEC. If OU and Texas go to the SEC before 2025 or 2026, we'll see, before the playoff expands, Oklahoma State's door is going to be wide open to be able to get in the playoff as a Big 12 champion. We'll see. But, man, it's very tough. They've stubbed their toes way too many times in the past for me to go and put all in on them. All right, number 4, Iowa. Much like Penn State, just don't have the quarterback. In fact, Iowa's got one of the worst quarterback situations in the Big Ten among the contenders every year, it seems like. They just don't – they're not explosive. They never will be under Kirk Ferentz. He's doubled down on keeping that offense the way it is. The defense has been fantastic, as we've seen over the years. The issue is, it's just you're not ever going to be explosive on offense. And at some point, that's going to bite you. I mean, listen, Purdue pushed them around and just blew them up this past year on the road. Iowa has got the type of physicality and the coaching to be a playoff team. That offense isn't it, man, and it's not going to work. to be a playoff team. Number 3, this is a team that's really hot right now and could be in the playoff this upcoming season, and that's Utah. You love what Kyle Whittingham's been doing there through his entire career. Just consistent. Model of consistency. Like Cam Rising, the tight ends they've got, running back Tavion Thomas. I really love watching this offense. You guys watched the Rose Bowl against Ohio State. A lot of fun there. If they can be as physical as they were this year in the trenches, going against the likes of Oregon, just blowing Oregon out because they were just bigger and more dominant, and avoid crazy losses like they had this past year against San Diego State, Utah will have a good resume and maybe be the first Pac-12 team in the playoff since, 2015, 2016? Yeah, 2016, the first one in 6 years. We'll see. Number 2, another Big Ten team, Wisconsin, which was the number 1 Power 5 program, the winningest, since 2014 without a playoff experience. But again, quarterback. I would feel much better about this program if all those rumors about Caleb Williams, the Oklahoma transfer, considering Wisconsin, ended up actually being true to a point where he was actually going to go there. That would be the biggest thing that happened to Wisconsin since Russell Wilson was there, obviously, and it would make them a legitimate playoff contender this year. I love Braylon Allen, that running back. If you didn't watch him as a freshman this past season, boy, you're going to learn his name and hear it a lot in 2022. But Wisconsin's up there just because they're not in the same division as Ohio State, and they don't have to deal with that every year. Can they get to the playoff? I think they're almost like a group of 5 school in the South. I'm not saying they're a group of 5 school. They're almost in that sense that they just have to be perfect now because of their schedule, that they can't really afford one loss unless that one loss is against an Ohio State type, but you're not going to get that until you get to the Big Ten championship. And at that point, you got to win the championship game in the Big Ten to reach the playoff. Number 1 is a program that was low on the winningest list, but is my highest in the immediate future to get to the playoff. That's had never been to the playoff, and that's Texas A&M. Duh. You signed the number 1 recruiting class this past year, the best ever in recruiting history, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, and you've signed top 6 to top 4 classes in every year under the Jimbo Fisher era. He has built that roster to contend in the SEC, and as a result, to be a playoff team and potentially win a national championship. And the history shows that. Between the years 2011 and 2020, the number 1 recruiting classes during that time have gone on to play for a national championship at least once. So that tells you Texas A&M should be in the playoff within the next 4 years and should be in the playoff before expansion hits. If not, Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher are going to be a disappointment. Harsh? Maybe, but that's the reality. Every number 1 recruiting class from 2011 to 2020 has been to the national championship game. And still, 2021, 2022 are out to be determined because they still have several more years to get there before their recruiting classes from those times expire. So an interesting list to go through, a lot of research. I couldn't believe how difficult it was to find records for every team from 2014 to 2021, but I found them and I put them together. Just an interesting list to kind of reference. I bookmarked it myself just so I can look at it this upcoming season and in the future to keep this going. Kind of a nice database to look at as the winningest teams to not yet reach the college football playoff and the ones who I believe have the best chance.